Coming up today on Uncommon Sense, Albert and I discuss Chesterton's famous poem, A Hymn, O God of Earth and Altar. This is a poem that you can also sing in church. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of G.K. Chesterton. I'm Grettelyn Darkey, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Albert Sines. How are you today, Albert?
Doing quite well. Thanks, Grettelyn.
Awesome. Today we are going to discuss probably one of Chesterton's more famous poems, one that he is actually known for in England because they sing this poem in church. It's a poem called O God of Earth and Altar. You may have heard it. If you've come to the conference, you definitely heard it because for the past few years, we've been singing it at the closing mass at the conference. But it's a beautiful poem. It's not too long. If you don't mind, Albert, I think I'll just read it in total, and then we can discuss maybe.
Please, read away.
Let's do that. You can find this poem if you want to read along on our website. I won't read the URL because it's rather long, but it will be posted here below the video. A Hymn by G.K. Chesterton. O God of earth and altar, bow down and hear our cry. Our earthly rulers falter, our people drift and die. The walls of gold entomb us, the swords of scorn divide. Take not thy thunder from us, but take away our pride. From all that terror teaches, from lies of tongue and pen, from all the easy speeches that comfort cruel men, from sale and profanation of honor and the sword, from sleep and from damnation, deliver us, good Lord. Tie in a living tether, the prince and priest and thrall. Bind all our lives together, smite us and save us all. In ire and exaltation, aflame with faith and free, lift up a living nation, a single sword to thee. So, beautiful, beautiful poem. I think extremely relevant for today, even though it was written about 100 years ago. Maybe we should just go through it kind of stanza by stanza. I think there's so much here, even though it's so short.
Oh, I love when, writers, poets, essayists, whatever, when they can pack a lot into very little. Sometimes you think, well, I gotta write pages and pages to explain myself. And Chesterton does it in 3 stanzas.
Yeah.
It's like, here's the state of the world, 3 stanzas, and here's what we need, all in that same 3 stanzas.
Well, and some of the fun of Chesterton is he often does both. I feel like, there's the book or the essay, What's Wrong with the World? And then there's this poem, and they're kind of saying the exact same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, but just beautiful. O God of earth and altar. I mean, that right there, it's sort of like God of nature, but also of man and of created things. And then asking God to bow down is such an audacious and sort of childlike plea. It's like when your kid tugs on your pant leg till you get down on the floor and play with them. I feel like that's kind of what Chesterton is asking here.
Yeah, I mean, just, please, God, help us. Like, come down from your heavenly realm. Like, come down. We're in trouble and we need help. Please, I'm crying out to you.
Yeah. Our earthly rulers falter, our people drift and die. But then the walls of gold entomb us, the swords of scorn divide. Like, how amazingly appropriate to our own day and age. I feel like we're sort of cushioned so hard in materialism. And then we also have this sort of, especially now with social media, we have this very vocal, everyone can be very vocal about anything that they don't like, and they are. And there's sort of very little tolerance for anyone else and anyone else's opinions. And I mean tolerance in the sense of, the ability even to have a conversation is sort of lost in all these voices of anger uh, and division.
Well, a lot of that is wrapped up in that line preceding that, right? The walls of gold entomb us, right? So we surround ourselves by our own choice, by our own decisions. We say, all right, I'm going to create this perfect little place inside that I'm going to hide. It's going to be comprised of material possessions, of wealth, of social media, of entertainment. I'm going to surround myself here. I'm going to trap myself here on purpose. You can't come in, but I certainly can come out, and I can scorn you. I can
Mm,
say whatever I want. And then the opposite person in their own gold box comes out and says, well, the same thing. Well, I have my own box. You can't
mm,
say that to me, but I can say that to you. And how dare you? And more of these gold boxes, are all over the place. And
mm,
we've created this sort of prison for ourselves, but this is what we wanted. Or this is the key thing. We tell ourselves, I wanted this. I
mm,
wanted to be trapped by all of this gold, by all of this fanciness, by this opulence, and I'm happy here. Turns out we're not really happy in the gold box, and we're really angry. Society's angry, they're bitter, and they really should come out of it. And
mm.
Chesterton notes that, right? Like, hey, let's get out of here because it's causing some problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shortly after my first child was born, I went through the KonMari method of tidying. That's another episode for another day. Um, but it basically entails you going through every possession you own and deciding whether or not you want to keep it. And it sort of created in me a mental state where I decided through that process to give up social media. I'm still on for work if I have to be, but I haven't posted or done anything really in years and years. And I feel like my mental health has really improved. Um, and you read all these horrifying statistics of young people, especially, high school age kids committing suicide because of cyberbullying. And I feel like we're in this horrible space of anger and sadness. And so often, instead of connecting us, our social media, quote unquote, divides. And I think there needs to be a greater compassion and more of a face to face element to people's interactions, so that they can really remember that they're talking to a human who has thoughts and feelings and a soul and is beloved by God.
I really do like the very end of it, though. Chesterton does a brilliant thing here, right? So, take not thy thunder from us, but take away our pride. So instead of saying, you know, God, come down here and wrap your loving arms around us, like Chesterton recognizes we
Mm,
need that sort of power from God. We need that thunder. We need that sort of that parental sort of correction from our heavenly Father. And so, no, don't stop being sort of firm with us, but do take away the thing that is really kind of the was it the plank in our eye,
mm,
take that out, which is our pride.
mm. Amen. As C.S. Lewis says, he's not a tame lion.
No, indeed, indeed.
Yeah, a really beautiful recognition of the power of God that Chesterton often has. And this next section, if you've ever, delved into the old martyrologies or some of the older not hymnals, but breviaries, you'll see a lot of these litanies. And there's all these litanies, from this, deliver us from plague, deliver us from and that's kind of what I feel like this next stanza is. It's like from all these things, but they're kind of modern things. Instead of saying deliver us from plague, deliver us from famine, deliver all the kind of things that you would normally pray for in one of those litanies. Here we have deliver us from basically being ruled by fear, from lies, from people that are trying to sell us bad things, from sleep and from damnation, which I don't think means real sleep, but so much
Oh,
as
sure.
sleepiness in our faith and in our ability to do the right thing, and then at the end, deliver us, good Lord. It's this really cool sort of take on the old litany, as Chesterton so often does. He brings something old and refreshes it in a beautiful way.
I think, we have a section on our website, sort of entitled prophetic essays, because Chesterton was such a prophet of his time. And this is a perfect example of Chesterton being prophetic, right? And it was alive and well in his time in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and now still very much prevalent, maybe even more so. But from lies of tongue and pen, and
Mm,
and what do we see from news to governments, and not just I mean, governments across the world. I mean, what
mm,
do we see? I mean, politics, countries, we see, lies that are just sort of, without really thought or
mm,
concern for what could happen, just people writing these fantastical stories saying this is the truth.
yeah.
Well, this is the truth, really. It's like, well, someone's lying. You can't all be telling the truth when all of your stories don't match up. So that means that we're living in a world of being lied to, which is
Mm,
really unfortunate that people out there that we're supposed to be trusting, someone's lying to us, and we have to face that. And then verbally, we do the same thing, right? So we lie from our very own mouths, like just, and sometimes we don't even know it. I think we're completely unaware of the things that we're saying. A lot of times people know they're lying. They know they're outright lying. But I think his point is that so much comes out from us that isn't even worth saying and that we shouldn't be saying, but it's just a part of us. It's a part of society again. And we need to be delivered from that. Like, take all
mm.
of that ugliness away out of our mouths, out of the things that we write and the things that we read.
I think too, I was actually thinking about this in church. Whoops, I don't know if I'm letting my mind wander. It was a long homily, but I was just thinking, because I know I've done that. I've chosen sort of the easy path of agreeing with things I don't really agree with, or not necessarily endorsing things I don't believe, but just sort of breezing past the difficult subjects, if you will. Um, and I was thinking to myself, why is this? Why is this so tempting? What is it about this that makes so many people sort of choose this path? And I just thought, well, it's easier. Because I recognized as I get older, I'm more and more tempted to choose that path, to just go the easy route, to just say the easy thing, because you're tired and you're old and you don't want to bother. But this is sort of a wake up call that it doesn't matter. You can't really ever give up on the truth. You have to continue to speak the truth, even when it's not easy. And you don't have to be rough about it. You don't have to be mean about it, but you really can't take the easy path of like, oh, everybody's going to be friends and everything's okay, because as Bishop Barron says, the I'm okay, you're okay culture is clearly not. So yeah, from all the easy speeches that comfort cruel men deliver us, good Lord. Yeah, just a really spectacular stanza there.
Again, he closes well, and you sort of mentioned it, from sleep and from damnation. And that sleepiness, I think you nailed it. It's a sleep of sort of being asleep to the life that we should be living. And it doesn't take much Chesterton to consume to find out that he was very much a man of live and experience the world. I mean, he's the one that talks, so in such sort of almost a whimsical and fantastical way of trying to look at the world, from the grass to the trees to the cows on a hill, you know, and that's the life that we're supposed to be leading. We're supposed to be leading this wonderful life, experiencing the beauty of God's creation, experiencing the Almighty, and we're sleeping through it a lot of the
Mm,
time.
mm,
And again, case in point, we are in large quantities sleeping through the life that God has intended us to be leading. We're almost sort of just, drones. We get up, we do our thing, we're done, we go to sleep, and we do it again. And in the middle of it, we want to call it, say, oh, well, I'm having fun. I'm doing this. I have this adventure. I have this great job. But in reality, we're just sleeping through life, and we're missing the great parts of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure. It makes me think of that song, Wachet auf, wake, oh, wake, the Lord is coming. These things that we sing in Advent, don't, the story of the wise virgins and the foolish virgins, stay awake, be ready, because you don't know when God is coming.
Keep some extra oil in your lamps, please, ladies and gentlemen. Stay awake. Keep some extra oil in your house and stay awake, because it's coming.
Read your Chesterton while you're staying awake.
Read your Chesterton while you're staying awake, and your extra oil. Read some Chesterton.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, and then in this beautiful, sort of paradoxical but hopeful way, he ties it all up at the end there. Bring everybody together, basically, and then smite us.
But that's perfect Chesterton. That's perfect Chesterton.
Smite us and save us. Kind of realizing that we can't have one without the other many times. I love it. I love it.
Well, it's like you said at the end of the first stanza, like, don't take away your thunder. Like, again, Chesterton reemphasizes we need that sort of affirming, not punishment, but we need that strength. We need that sort of tough love. Let's call it that from God. Like, hey, we all need to be smited here, okay? And that's going to actually save us. If we can feel that power from God, it should actually help propel us towards eternity, versus if God did not sort of lay down any punishments on us, right? Then it's like, oh, well, God's not going to do anything to me. Well, then you risk sort of sleeping your life away.
Right. It's that wake up call that we talked about in the Job episode too, that there's sort of like this value in suffering. And I think we can all, when we're being honest, admit that we turn to God so much more readily when life is hard. It's so easy to forget him when things are easy and when everything is going okay. But when you're sort of like, I don't really know how we're going to get through this, that's when you turn to God, because there's nowhere else to turn. That's honestly where I feel the most for people who don't believe in God. I'm like, how do they get through this stuff?
Sure.
How do they make it past this point without the trust that I've been blessed with? Yeah.
But even in those moments, even in like you said, how do we do it without God? Like, how do we, if there was nothing to even grasp onto, right? So it was just suffering and the worst of days, the worst time of our lives. I know that I have those moments where I'm questioning where God is in those really tough moments. Like, God, where are you? Why are you not answering my prayers? Where are you? And the fact is, even in the midst of feeling like God isn't around, the fact is I'm still talking to God. I'm asking him, right? And then God appears and God makes things better. But can you imagine not having anything to hold on to? Like, it would just be sort of extended suffering. Like, we might pull ourselves out. We might find a way out of our darkest moments in life. But at least with a God that is loving and merciful, we always have something to sort of grasp onto, to rest in, to give us something to push us forward. And I think that's worth having some suffering, only because it gives something better on the other side of it.
Amen. Yeah. Yep. And as those of us with kids know, when suffering happens, that's when comfort happens. So, the parent almost isn't allowed in many times unless there's a reason. And, when the kid falls down, they need the hug. But sometimes if you're just, you say, "Oh, give me a hug," and they say, "No, no, no." So it's sort of this opportunity to experience God's comfort in a way that we can't when everything's fine and we're doing okay.
I think parenting has a lot of great analogies to the way that God sort of interacts with us, because God tries to take care of us, we sort of ignore it, and then we suffer, and then we say, "I'm sorry, God," and we come back, and He's like, "It's okay," but or when we feel sort of the punishment or the discipline of God, and it's like, "Oh, I feel really bad," but we come back because we want to feel His love, and like when we parent, I have small children, and lay down some tough discipline, and they're sort of upset and they're hurting and they're kind of crying, but they do want to come back, like they
Mm,
want to feel the love that I provide, that my wife provides, because they know that we do care, and they
right.
know that we are ultimately the ones that will provide that comfort for them. So there's that moment of like tension because they got in trouble, but then ultimately they just want to come back and they want to lay their head on your chest and feel your
Hmm.
arms around them, and so the punishment, the smite, the other words I can't think of right now, they're all for a better purpose. They just help to strengthen that relationship with God.
Yeah. And oftentimes, the smite kind of comes from life. It doesn't even come from God necessarily.
Hmm.
And you just have to it's like where do you turn during the smite that sort of defines how you're going to be. Um yeah, but just I mean those getting towards the end here, in ire and exaltation, aflame with faith and free. Um this idea of all of this, so the first stanzas, the very first stanza, he's kind of talking about the things that are binding us. The biggest one being the last line there, the pride, but all these things that are sort of binding us and making us slaves. And then the second stanza, there's sort of this plea for deliverance. And then in the third one, this sort of cry of hope of like, let's choose faith and let's choose freedom. And true freedom in the sense of not being bound to these things that are keeping us from God, that are keeping us from each other, that are keeping us from true friendship and true freedom. Uh, and it's sort of this countercultural idea that faith will set you free,
Mm.
but it definitely does. So it's this beautiful, in very, again, of course, very Chestertonian way, aflame with faith and free. I love that line. This idea of sort of being on fire with your faith and it setting you free to point up to God with your single sword, just to point to God and to be fully alive.
I think that freedom point, there's so much to sort of unpack. I mean, he just says free. Again, he's packed so much into such a short hymn here, this poem. And you really, again, you nailed it right on when you talked about a faith that will set us free. And you are also right that it sort of is countercultural, the way to look at the Christian faith, you know, specifically. And a lot of people see, well, I see a bunch of rules, I see a bunch of regulations,
Hmm.
I see those 10 commandments as holding me back. How can you say there's real freedom inside of a faith that has so many rules? And to try to explain to people, yeah, but you don't understand the rules, as you call them, keep you from all the things that are bad.
Mm.
It's not a perfect setup. We're because we're human and we have free will and we fault, but when we're doing our best to follow those God-given rules and you really embrace them, you find that all those other things that you were doing that you shouldn't have been doing, like, oh, well, I was sort of a slave to those
Mm.
things, right? So no, yeah, there is freedom in faith because that means you get to live without all of the weight, all of the emotional baggage, all of the hurt, all of the sort of tragicness of living a life that didn't include God. Now you could
Mm.
just sort of you can do everything good, you can do everything right, you can be actually happy, honestly joyful, all because you're free within the faith that God has given to us.
Beautiful. And you get sort of these melancholy figures. I'm thinking of Belloc even, who is kind of famously melancholic, but Catholic his whole life and very faithful. And you sort of get this impression that maybe sometimes the faith is like the one pinprick of light. And even people who kind of can't let go of their sadness, their day-to-day struggles, it's sort of the faith that's the only thing that's kind of keeping them afloat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes me also think of another quote from Chesterton from an essay where he talks about the wall around the playground, and if it wasn't there, all the children would cower in the middle because they would be afraid to go near the cliff. But when the wall is up, they can run around anywhere they want because they're feeling safe. And the faith is kind of this wall of safety that protects us and gives our lives definition and really makes us free to do anything we want.
Yeah, instead of entombing ourselves in gold, we should entomb ourselves with God and faith and see the difference that life makes. And it's drastic. It's a drastic difference between a tomb of gold and a tomb of faith. If you even want to call faith like, a tomb, but I'm just trying to reference off of Chesterton's words.
There's resurrection. We know that.
Yeah, right. True. There is life after death.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Wonderful. Well, so great to discuss this poem with you, Albert. Thank you so much.
Oh, it is always good to talk with you and always good to try to open up Chesterton, which really isn't that hard.
Especially when you are with friends. Chesterton seems to open up all by himself. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We really hope that you will hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the podcasts that we put out here. And if you're planning on going to the conference this year, we'll hopefully have more details up on our website about that soon, but you can join us in singing this hymn, as we'll be singing it, I'm sure, again at the closing Mass again this year.
And we want to be sure that we remind you, if you've missed somehow the news, if you've missed the announcement, so the conference happening next summer, July 27th through the 29th, is going to be on Chesterton and St. Francis, and our major keynote speaker is going to be Bishop Robert Barron from Word on Fire. So if you're interested, keep a lookout for that information coming to the website, hopefully very soon. And we would love to have you sign up and go to the conference. So keep a lookout. We will definitely keep you posted here on the Uncommon Sense podcast.
And if you want to learn more, we don't have signups open yet, but you can sign up to receive information about the conference. If you go to chesterton.org/conference, you will find a link there to sign up to receive emails and be the first to know when registration is open so that you can hear Bishop Barron and Dale and so many other wonderful speakers in person. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of G.K. Chesterton. It's been so great to talk to you again, Albert. Thank you so much.
Again, my extreme pleasure to be here with you.
And it has been my pleasure to talk to you and to be here with all of our listeners. We really hope that you will find your own favorite Chesterton poems, which you can find on our website. And again, remember, Chesterton is always better with friends. Thank you.